Twin turbo Tundra in the shop, and it's more than just an oil change on this one. Welcome back, everybody. David Shepard here on the Good Shepherd Garage YouTube channel. Got some work to be done on this 2023 Toyota Tundra. If you guys have been following along, we've got a fleet of Tundras here. They're mostly all out at work here right now, but we've got half a dozen of the new generation twin turbo Tundras, and with all the issues that have come up, all the publicity, bad press about the new twin turbo engine on the Tundras, I'm just reporting what I see, what I find, as the guy who maintains this fleet of Tundras. This company's been using a lot of the older 5.7 Tundras for a long time, and just in the natural progression of updating their fleet has moved to these twin turbo units, and I'm happy to continue to report, like I said, just what I find, what we experience. No engine failures, no engine trouble, and really very few problems at all. One truck had a little malfunction with that automatic front air dam I showed you guys in the past, but no engine drivetrain problems, really no major issues at all, and we've just been doing regular maintenance on these trucks. And this one here is at 40,000 miles, so it's time for a little more than just an oil change. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a tune-up on this new 3.5 twin turbo engine, all right after a word of scripture, of course. So today I want to share Psalm 100, verse 5, which says, "God is good. His steadfast love endures forever. His faithfulness to all generations." So just an encouragement to you guys, and a reminder that God is good. He's been so faithful. His love for me has been steadfast. He's been so faithful in my life. And if you don't know the Lord, if you don't currently believe in his son Jesus and read his word and have a relationship with your heavenly Father and Creator, I encourage you to do so. And I could just tell you in my own life, it's been the greatest blessing, and he has in fact been faithful to me. So thanks for listening. Now let's jump right into the work on, like I said, this one's a 2023, I believe it was late 22 production year or production date. No, 8 of 23. Okay, so 2023, and it is at 40,000 miles. I'll just show you guys, not our highest mileage. We've got some with over 50K now, and I need to get caught up on doing this maintenance on those, but this one's right at 40,000, and so it's time to do a little tune-up. It's time for some spark plugs in this thing. Air filters, there are 2 of them, one on each side for the twin turbos. So that's part of our regular maintenance. And then the spark plugs, obviously 6 of these ruthenium spark plugs. So if you're not familiar with these, this is kind of new for me. Obviously, I've used a lot of platinum and iridium spark plugs, and these are similar, but they're a little different, and they're definitely more expensive, I'll warn you. Ruthenium is a pretty rare, precious metal. I guess it's similar to iridium, like as far as chemically and whatnot, but it's a precious metal and pretty rare, and it's supposed to just burn more quickly, like allow for quicker ignition, which is supposed to translate to a smoother idle, a little more complete burn, and better cold starts as well. So I don't know, that's what these Toyotas call for, so that's what we went with. We went with the NGKs. I've just had good success with them in the past, but if you're a Denso or Toyota only guy, I get that. But if you want to use the NGKs, there's the part number, obviously 6 of those, and 0.028 gap, I believe. I'll confirm that. I'll confirm the gap with you guys. And then also 2 air filters. We use the Napa Gold stuff. You know, that's what's readily available here. I've got a commercial account at the local Napas and get pretty good pricing. And if you don't know, Napa Gold filters are manufactured by Wix. So they're just a Wix filter. The part number is cross-reference, and Wix is good quality stuff in my opinion. So there's the part numbers for the 2 air filters, and of course an oil change as well. There's the part number for the oil filter. I've got a video on the oil change for these trucks if you haven't seen it, and need a good how-to do an oil change on the twin turbo, including resetting the maintenance light. I'll put a link in the description, but I've got that video out already. So today I'm going to tear into the tune-up, the spark plugs, the air filters. I'm going to clean the mass airflow sensors, and then that's basically your tune-up for a modern fuel-injected vehicle. Some might argue a couple different things, maybe putting some fuel treatment injector cleaner in there, but basically air filter, spark plugs, clean the mass airflow sensors, and that's your tune-up on a modern fuel-injected engine like this. So I'm going to get under the hood, show you guys how to get this done, and follow along. All right, guys, got the oil change done. Like I said, there's already a video on that, but if you guys are curious, what we've been doing on these Tundras, actually on this whole fleet here, is Mobil 1 synthetic, the 0W20 that it calls for every 5,000 miles. So yes, some manufacturers, some oil manufacturers say you could go 10,000 miles on full synthetic oil, but I never do. You know, to each their own on that, but what I personally do is 3,000 miles on conventional oil, 5,000 miles on synthetic, and really it depends on the vehicle. So I think the best thing to do is take a look at your oil, pull that dipstick, see when it starts really turning black, or you know, starting to get darker. That's when I change it, and on these, it's been right around 5,000 miles, and like I said, we have not had any engine failures, so I don't know if that's just luck of the draw or because of the maintenance we're doing, but anyway, just thought I'd mention that. Now we're diving right into the spark plug change. I'm starting on the passenger side here. There's a little bit more access. The driver's side is going to be quite a bit tighter to get those rear coil packs out, but I'll show you guys that when we get to it. So for now, all I did was disconnect the battery because we are going to be disconnecting some wiring, including the mass airflow sensors here. Like I said, we're going to be pulling these out to clean them, and then disconnecting some of this wire loom, and of course, unplugging the coil pack. So I've got this first one unplugged and removed from the truck. So that's standard, just like any other coil unplug, ignition, unplug it, one bolt. It is an 8mm long bolt with an 8mm head right here. Thankfully this core support's still steel, but boy, you got to get creative with your magnets on these aluminum hoods. But anyway, got that coil pack pulled out, and then I actually got the spark plug pulled out. First thing I'll mention is you're going to need a pretty specific spark plug socket for this that I actually do not have. So this is 14mm. Of course, it needs to be an extra deep well to accommodate the spark plug, and I actually don't have one. I tried. This has a nice rubber boot inside. This it's actually a Pittsburgh 14mm 6-point, which I do like to use 6-point socket on these spark plugs, but it's a big 1/2-inch drive, and I thought it would fit down in the spark plug well, but you could see where it's rubbed the paint off, and I just about got it stuck in that spark plug well. So just keep that in mind. You're going to need a pretty thin-walled, extra deep 14mm 6-point spark plug socket, or at least an extra deep spark plug socket for these. What I found I had on the truck is, where did I set it? It's over here, but it's an extra deep 9/16, which is very, very close to 14mm, and it's a nice 6-point fit on here, no problem. So here's the original plug from that front right cylinder. Here is the Denso part number of what was in there originally, if you want to use Denso plugs. And it does look exactly the same, or very, very similar to the NGKs that we got here. Pretty interesting. They're a long, thin spark plug, and they've got a lot of threads on them. So keep that in mind. You'll need a good socket for that, but we made it work with what we have. Got this one out, and I confirmed it is a .028 gap. So I actually checked the gap on the existing spark plug, and it's actually just a little tight. So interesting, that gap didn't open up. In fact, we don't have much wear on the electrode or the grounding strap, and it's actually just tighter than 028. So that could be carbon buildup, but it's very, very close. These ones, they come pre-gapped, but of course I always check them all. You know, with spark plugs, it's a pretty simple thing, but you could have catastrophic effects if you got the wrong plugs, right? So I always just double check the part number on the plug in case it got mispackaged. I line it up with the old one and check the length, because obviously if you wind up with a spark plug that's too long, it could hit the top of the piston. So that's just me. I double check the part number, the length, and then double check the gap, even though most spark plugs these days come pre-gapped. You never know if they got dropped or bent or anything like that. But it is .028, and pretty straightforward thus far, just removing the coil pack and then getting access to the spark plug. But we do have to remove some wiring and hoses. So I showed you what I took off so far. In addition, this little vacuum hose sits right here on this nipple. That was kind of in the way of the coil pack, so I just popped that off, set it out of the way. And then I chose to, I don't think this is necessary, but I chose to remove the turbo inlet pipe, basically from airbox down to turbo, and it includes this little vacuum hose here. I just wanted to take a look. I wanted to see how much oil blow by. You know, all turbochargers pass a little bit of oil through the intake, so I was curious how much was getting in there, so I popped that off. And like I said, we're going to be replacing the mass airflow, or sorry, cleaning the mass airflow sensors anyway, but it looks fairly dry in there, just a little sheen of oil, which again is totally normal, especially for a turbo engine. And you do get a little more access by popping those off. So that's what we got so far to get the first spark plug out. I'm going to get that changed and keep going here. All right, guys, got all 3 coil packs and spark plugs out from the passenger side here. Don't mind this. This was my socket retrieval tool to get under there and to hook that thing out. But got all 3 coil packs. I just left them out to show you guys what I actually removed to get in here. Again, I did remove the turbo inlet pipe just to inspect it and get some better room. And unfortunately, I've got to admit, either this was broken, there is a little support bracket on there. I don't know, I took the clamps off and that hose came right off, so this may have been broken beforehand. But anyhow, there is 1 bolt onto the valve cover there if you are removing that inlet pipe. Aside from that, there's just some wiring and wiring harness brackets to remove. So you could see there's one, hopefully you could see, there's one 10 millimeter bolt to hold this bracket to the valve cover. That's for a heater core hose. So you can just take that 1 bolt out and lift this out of the way enough to get that second coil pack out of the way. And then this big, let me get this light out of here. This big electrical harness here has 1 bolt here on the valve cover. You could remove that, and 1 more right, let's get you a better view, right here. So those 2 brackets, 10 millimeter bolts to remove those, and then you can lift this out of the way enough to get that 3rd coil pack out of there. It is a bit tight, just takes some patience. There's some delicate things in there, as we see, but really just a couple 10 millimeter bolts just to be able to move and manipulate those wiring harnesses, and you can get access to pull all 3 of these out, change your plugs, and now we'll be going back together. So I'm going to slide these coil packs back in. The rear, this is from front to back. The rear one does face the opposite way, so the plug is in the back. You guys will see that when you get in there. So I'm going to slide these back in. The new plugs went in nice and easy, and we'll be moving to the other side. All right, guys, got these passenger side coil packs all back in. 1, 2, and 3 underneath here. Got these bolts back on, 1 there for the electrical bracket, and 1 hiding right there. I don't know if this light's hurting or helping, but 1 there, 1 there, and then this bolt right here, an 8 millimeter head for that heater core hose. Got this little vacuum line plugged back in that we moved for this first coil pack. Got them all plugged back in, like I said, and then went ahead and changed out the air filter. You know, with this hose off, I would recommend taking that off. Make some more room to change the plugs, and then if you're doing the air filters and mass airflow as well, good access for that. So just stick a rag down in there so nothing falls in the turbo, of course. And yeah, it makes it nice and easy to change this air filter. This one was pretty dirty looking. And here's the Toyota Denso part number if you'd prefer to use that over the Napa Gold. However, I will say the Napa Gold filter fits in there perfectly. Looks exactly the same. Good fitment there. And then I got my mass airflow sensor cleaner out, and rather than remove, you could remove these 2 screws and get a better look at those, but with this off, you could get really good access to that to be able to clean it off, let it dry thoroughly, and we'll snap that stuff back in and be moving over to the driver's side. So hope that helps you guys. It is a little difficult, some delicate things you need to move out of the way, but if you just take your time, really just a couple bolts and just, you know, gently massaging some wires out of the way, you could get all 3 of these coil packs out and change those plugs. So we'll see how it goes on the driver's side here. All right, guys, just like that, got all 3 of the coil packs and spark plugs out of the driver's side here. Pretty much the same, I actually wouldn't, it looks like it's buried a little more on this side, but I actually wouldn't say it's any more difficult. Let's see, I did remove the air box and just this first section of flexible inlet hose there, and then these 2 10mm bolts, these silver ones here, will unbolt this kind of junction box of this electrical harness here, and then beneath that you'll need to remove these 2 shorter black 10mm bolts to get this bracket. It bolts just behind here, and that's what that junction box bolts down to. So take the 2 top bolts out, and then there's 2 bolts that actually secure this, one right here and one around the front that secure it to actually to more bracketry. Hopefully you can see where it lives right there. And once this is unbolted, pull that out of the way, and you've got good access to that first coil pack. You can see the spark plug well and the bolt where that bolts down. And then to get to the second one, all you've got to do is, this also bolts to this bracket, by the way, one more bolt holding that in. To get to the second one, which is right here, all you're going to have to do is okay, sorry guys, I got a roadside call in the middle of filming here, but to get to that second coil pack, all you've got to do is just move this solenoid out of the way. If you could see this slot right there, that flat slot, that just rests on a little tab there. So all you gotta do is lift that out of the way, and I didn't disconnect any wires or hoses to that. There's enough play and everything to just move it out of the way, and then that's all that's needed. With that moved, you could move it kind of the opposite way to get to that third and final coil pack that bolts right there. So hope that helps you guys. Those are the items that I removed to gain access, and then it's just a matter of removing each long bolt that holds each coil pack. These are an 8mm head. I used a couple extensions on this cordless ratchet. That was very helpful since those bolts are pretty long and quite a few threads on there. So aside from that, it's just a typical spark plug change for a coil-on plug ignition system. I like to use a telescoping magnet to get down in that spark plug well and lift each spark plug out. You know, it's gonna magnetize right to the top here. So that's how I like to pull them out, so I'm not pressing down and potentially damaging the threads. And then to set the new plugs in and get them started, I actually like to use a piece of hose. So if you've never done this trick, you could find the right size hose, and that's gonna slip over the spark plug end and hold it in place, and then you could gently thread that in without damaging any threads or damaging the porcelain or anything. So that's how I like to do it. Obviously, if you have a good spark plug socket with a good boot that'll hold the plug for you, that works as well. But that's the route I went. I've got all 3 new plugs in, properly gapped, and just want to show you guys the access there. So I'm going to go ahead, bolt these coil packs back in. Just to review, I'm going to remount this solenoid here on its tab right there. I'm going to bolt this bracket back in with the 2 10mm bolts, and then we could bolt the junction box back to said bracket. I'm going to change this air filter and clean the mass airflow, obviously, and put that intake duct back on, and then we'll be firing it up and making sure everything's good. All right, you guys, just like that, we're all back together, running nice and smooth. New plugs in there, new air filters, did an oil change as well, and cleaned the mass airflow sensors. So this one is all good to go with its 40,000 mile service. Just shut this off real quick. I will say these plugs didn't look too bad. I'll show you guys one interesting thing. Again, the gap was okay. It was slightly tight on all of them, so I don't know. The book calls for that 0.028, which is what I set the new ones at, but these are all slightly tighter, so again, maybe just carbon buildup. But I will say these really don't look too bad. So if it were my truck, I don't know, with the cost of these plugs, I might extend that to 50 or 60,000 miles. Obviously up to you. And this company really wants to keep these trucks running strong and stick to the scheduled maintenance recommended by Toyota. So 40,000, we changed these out. One thing that's interesting is these plugs all looked very much the same until I got to the very last one, which for me was driver's side all the way in the back. And it had a little oil on the threads. Not much, but you could see, maybe you could see a little bit of oil on the threads and just a little oil fouled. Not on the end of the plug, not on the electrode or the grounding strap, but in the end, and like I said, on the thread. So that was the only one that had any oil on it. So maybe spark plug tube seal on that cylinder, not sure, but we'll keep an eye on that. And hope this helps you guys. Hope this encourages you. You can change the spark plugs on this by yourself, I'd say in a couple hours, depending on your experience. With just basic hand tools. Again, have a nice 14 millimeter 6-point extended spark plug socket, thin wall that's going to fit in there will help. And I will say I put a little bit of lube on the outside of the coil packs where they slide in, because these particular spark plug tubes are just pretty tight, even compared to most I've worked on. So it definitely helps having a little bit of lubrication to slide those coil packs back in gently. And other than that, you really just got to move some things out of the way and get in there and change out those plugs. I will say, I would not want to have to do valve cover gaskets on one of these trucks. There's just so much wiring and vacuum hoses and everything else either bolted to or just in the way of these valve covers that really does not look like a fun job. So maybe I'll pull that plug out again at the next oil change, see how that looks. If there's any more or less oil on it, keep an eye on that. But I'm really hoping I don't have to do valve cover gaskets and those tube seals. So hope this video helps you guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys will seek the Lord and find out for yourself that He is so incredibly faithful and full of steadfast love. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Leave your comments down below or any questions you might have about a tune-up on these twin turbo Toyota Tundras, and I'll keep you guys posted, good, bad, or otherwise, on our fleet of Tundras. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next one.